7. Ways your subconscious is sabotaging you without you knowing. Have you ever wondered why your life keeps repeating the same patterns, the same people, the same mistakes, the same pain, no matter how hard you try to change? Carl Jung believed, it's not fate, it's your subconscious mind. Beneath your awareness lies a hidden force that shapes every thought, emotion, and relationship you have. This is the part of you that remembers what you've forgotten, the silent architect of your reality. Once you understand it, you'll never see your life the same way again. Part 1. The hidden architecture of the subconscious mind. The human mind is not a single unified field of awareness. It is a layered structure, a psychological ecosystem that hides more than it reveals. What we call consciousness is only the surface, like the small visible part of an iceberg, while underneath lies an enormous unseen mass that silently governs our emotions, choices, fears, and desires. Carl Jung called this deep layer the unconscious, or more specifically the personal and collective unconscious. Within it, our suppressed memories, forgotten emotions, and instinctive drives remain alive, influencing every aspect of our being without our permission. Most people believe they make decisions through logic and reason. Yet Jung showed that reason is often a justification, not a cause. Beneath our rational thinking, there is a current of emotional energy that pushes us towards certain behaviors. A man who claims to act purely from logic may actually be obeying the inner voice of his wounded child. A woman who feels drawn to toxic relationships is often unconsciously repeating a familiar pain she once knew in childhood. The subconscious mind is the stage director behind these repetitive life patterns. It doesn't care about morality or logic. It seeks expression, completion, and recognition. From Jung's perspective, the subconscious is not simply a repository of forgotten material, it is alive. It is creative, symbolic, and autonomous. It dreams, it speaks in metaphors, it constructs coincidences to get our attention. Jung wrote that the unconscious compensates the conscious mind. If we live too one-sidedly rational, without emotion, or moral without instinct, the subconscious creates opposing images or experiences to restore balance. That is why people who deny their aggression often attract conflict. Those who repress their sensuality often encounter it externally in the form of temptation or fascination with others who embody what they reject. The architecture of the subconscious begins with the personal unconscious. This includes forgotten memories, repressed experiences, and psychological complexes that form around emotional trauma. A complex is an organized cluster of feelings, thoughts, and images surrounding a theme like the mother complex or inferiority complex. These complexes operate as semi-independent personalities within us. When someone touches one of these inner wounds, the complex temporarily takes control, and we react with disproportionate emotion. That's why you might suddenly feel rage, shame, or fear in situations that don't objectively justify it. The reaction belongs to the unconscious, not to the present moment. Deeper still is the collective unconscious, a vast field of psychic patterns inherited from the entire history of humanity. These are the archetypes, primordial images that structure human experience. The mother, the hero, the trickster, the shadow, the wise old man, these are not mere stories but fundamental psychic blueprints. Even when we think our choices are original, they follow these unconscious patterns. A person who becomes obsessed with saving others might be unconsciously enacting the hero archetype. Another who constantly sabotages himself may be driven by the shadow archetype, expressing the repressed side of his nature. The subconscious mind constantly communicates with us, but it does not speak in words. It uses feelings, dreams, and symbols. When you experience déjà vu, recurring dreams, or sudden anxiety for no reason, the subconscious is signaling that something in your inner world demands attention. Jung described dreams as direct messages from the unconscious, a natural attempt of the psyche to reveal what the ego ignores. A dream of drowning may represent emotional overwhelm. A dream of flight might express a longing for freedom or transcendence. The symbols vary between individuals, but the language is universal. To understand the subconscious, we must recognize that it works according to different laws than the conscious mind. The conscious mind operates linearly, logically within time and space. The subconscious, on the other hand, is timeless, associative, and paradoxical. It connects things not by cause, but by meaning. That's why in dreams a person can transform into another, or an event can repeat with a different outcome. The subconscious sees no contradiction in opposites, it integrates them. This is the foundation of Jung's idea that psychological health depends on the union of opposites. In daily life, the subconscious mind shapes our reactions long before thought intervenes. Neuroscience later confirmed what Jung intuited: most of our brain activity occurs before we are aware of it. By the time we decide, the subconscious has already chosen. This is why habits, addictions, and emotional triggers are so resistant to change. They are not flaws of willpower, but the expressions of deeper unconscious programming. The only way to change them is not through suppression, but through awareness, bringing the hidden pattern into consciousness. For example, consider the person who continually chooses partners who are emotionally unavailable. Consciously, they may insist they want love and stability, but unconsciously, they are reenacting a childhood script, perhaps trying to win the affection of a distant parent through repetition. Until they face that inner wound, the subconscious will continue orchestrating similar relationships as a way of seeking resolution. Jung called this phenomenon the compulsion to repeat. The psyche repeats pain not because it enjoys suffering, but because it wants healing through recognition. The subconscious is also the seat of intuition. Many people misunderstand intuition as mere instinct, but for Jung it is a form of perception by way of the unconscious. When you just know something without reasoning, it is often the result of the subconscious synthesizing vast amounts of information, both personal and archetypal, faster than the conscious mind can process. The subconscious connects dots that the conscious cannot see. It perceives the hidden order behind events, what Jung referred to as synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal an underlying unity between psyche and matter. However, the same subconscious that guides can also sabotage. When its content is ignored or denied, it turns destructive. The repressed shadow seeks expression in distorted forms: anxiety, obsession, projection, and even physical illness. Jung warned that neurosis is the suffering of a soul that has not discovered its meaning. What we call psychological symptoms are often the subconscious crying for attention, demanding that we integrate what we have rejected. The nightmare, the panic attack, or the sudden depression is not the enemy. It is the language of the unconscious revealing where the split lies. The subconscious mind also influences perception. Two people can experience the same event but interpret it differently based on their inner worlds. The external world acts as a mirror of the internal one. When you see betrayal everywhere, it might be because your own suppressed distrust colors perception. When you find kindness easily, your subconscious resonates with it. Jung often said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That irritation is a projection, a reflection of something unacknowledged within. Understanding the subconscious, therefore, requires humility. The ego, the conscious, likes to believe it controls everything. Yet the subconscious continuously reveals that we are not masters of our own house. Jung compared the ego to a cork floating on the ocean of the unconscious. The waves may seem external, but they rise from the depths within. To navigate life wisely, we must learn to observe those waves instead of denying them. The first step toward this awareness is observation without judgment. Notice your emotional triggers. Watch how your body reacts before your mind explains. The subconscious communicates through sensations, through sudden moods, through slips of the tongue or accidents. When you forget an appointment, when you lose something important, when a song keeps replaying in your head, these are all potential expressions of the unconscious trying to make contact. Jung's clinical work demonstrated that once a person becomes conscious of the unconscious motive behind a symptom, the symptom often loses its power. the energy bound in repression becomes available for creativity and growth. For instance, a person haunted by chronic anxiety might discover that beneath it lies an unlived passion or unexpressed anger. When that energy is given constructive form through art, conversation, or purpose, the anxiety transforms into vitality. The subconscious is not moral, it is natural. It holds both the noble and the savage within us. Civilization teaches repression of instinct, but Jung believed true maturity requires integration, not denial. The goal is not to become pure, but to become whole, to unite the instinctive and the spiritual, the rational and the emotional. Only then can the subconscious serve its intended role as a guide rather than a saboteur. Throughout history, cultures have personified the subconscious in myths and gods. The Greeks had Hades, ruler of the underworld. Christianity speaks of temptation and the devil. In Jungian language, these are symbolic expressions of the human struggle with its own depths. The underworld journey of ancient heroes mirrors the modern psychological descent into the unconscious. Each of us must face our own darkness to retrieve the treasure of self-knowledge hidden there. To explore the subconscious is to confront paradox. It is both personal and universal, terrifying and healing, chaotic yet wise. Jung saw it as the source of creativity, religion, and transformation. When people cut themselves off from it, they become mechanical, soulless, alienated from meaning. But when they engage it consciously through dreams, art, meditation, or analysis, they reconnect with the living center of their being. The subconscious mind, in Jung's view, is not a dungeon but a vast inner cosmos. Its architecture is dynamic, layered, and full of energy. It stores every emotional imprint, every forgotten experience, and every ancestral memory that shaped the human soul. To understand it is to understand why we suffer love and repeat our patterns. The task of depth psychology is to make this hidden architecture visible, not to control it, but to cooperate with it, to let the light of awareness touch even the darkest corners of our inner world. When we begin to see that our external life is an expression of our internal landscape, the power of the subconscious becomes evident. The world responds to the state of our inner being. Every relationship, every challenge, and every desire is a mirror reflecting our own psyche back to us. The subconscious mind does not punish or reward, it educates. It shows us again and again who we are beneath the surface illusions. And when we finally have the courage to look, the very darkness we feared becomes the source of our transformation. Part 2. Symbols, archetypes, and the language of the subconscious. The subconscious does not think in sentences, logic, or linear time. It communicates through symbols, images charged with emotional and spiritual energy. For Carl Jung, symbols are the natural language of the unconscious, a bridge between the unknown and the known. While the conscious mind uses concepts to define reality, the subconscious expresses truth through metaphor. This is why dreams, myths, and art often reveal more about the human soul than any rational explanation ever could. When a symbol arises from the subconscious, it is not random. It is an autonomous creation, a living image born from the depths of the psyche, attempting to express something that cannot yet be articulated. Jung emphasized that the psyche is inherently symbolic. Every time we dream, imagine, or create, we are translating psychic energy into form. The subconscious uses these forms to reveal hidden aspects of the self. The power of archetypes. At the foundation of this symbolic system lie the archetypes, universal psychological patterns inherited from the collective unconscious. These are not learned ideas, but ancient templates of experience that shape perception, emotion, and behavior. Every human being carries the same archetypal patterns, just as we share similar biological structures. Jung identified many archetypes: the shadow, the anima and animus, the hero, the wise old man, the mother, the child, the trickster, and the self. Each one represents a timeless motif of human experience. They are not abstract theories, but living forces that influence our dreams, stories, and choices. For example, the mother archetype appears in countless forms across cultures as the Virgin Mary, Gaia, Isis, or the nurturing earth itself. It represents nourishment, creation, protection, but also possessiveness and engulfment when distorted. Similarly, the hero archetype embodies the quest for meaning and self-realization, from Hercules to Christ to modern-day individuals seeking transformation. The shadow, on the other hand, personifies everything we reject about ourselves, our repressed desires, rage, jealousy, lust, or vulnerability. The beauty and terror of archetypes lie in their autonomy. They act as psychological organs of the soul. When repressed, they become pathological. When integrated, they bring wisdom and vitality. A person haunted by nightmares of being chased might be confronting their shadow. Another who dreams of flying might be awakening the hero or self archetype, the impulse toward transcendence and freedom. Dreams. The subconscious in symbolic form. Dreams are perhaps the purest expression of the subconscious language. They bypass censorship and logic, delivering raw messages from the psyche. Jung treated dreams as sacred communications. To him, a dream was not merely a reflection of daily events, but a symbolic drama staged by the unconscious to correct imbalance or reveal forgotten truths. When a patient dreamed of drowning, Jung saw not a literal danger, but an emotional one, being overwhelmed by repressed feelings. A dream of a locked door might signify potential unrealized, an opportunity waiting for courage. The subconscious mind chooses its symbols precisely. Every object, person, and emotion carries psychological weight. Jung warned that interpreting symbols literally is a mistake. The subconscious does not use them as direct messages, but as transformative metaphors. A snake might not represent evil, but renewal because it sheds its skin. Death in a dream might not predict physical death, but a psychological transformation, the death of an old attitude. The key to understanding symbols lies not in universal dictionaries, but in personal association. What does the snake, the ocean, or the darkness mean to you? The subconscious tailors its language to your inner landscape. The collective symbolism of humanity beyond individual experience lies the collective field, a psychic inheritance that connects every human being. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a kind of deep psychic ocean from which myths, religions, and art emerge. Every culture tells similar stories because the human soul shares the same symbolic roots. Consider creation myths. Across civilizations, there is always a story of light emerging from chaos, of a hero confronting darkness, of death leading to rebirth. These recurring patterns are not coincidences, they are the collective dreams of humanity. Jung observed that modern people still live under the influence of these archetypal narratives, though we often disguise them under new names. The superhero movie, the romantic tragedy, the self-help journey, all are modern vessels for ancient archetypes. The subconscious thrives on images because images transcend time. They can hold contradictory meanings, mirroring the paradoxical nature of the psyche itself. Fire, for instance, can symbolize destruction or enlightenment. Water can cleanse or drown. The subconscious loves ambiguity because truth in the psyche is rarely singular. Jung believed that when a symbol arises, it holds both light and shadow, the potential for healing or harm depending on how we engage with it. Symbols as bridges to transformation. When we engage consciously with our inner symbols, transformation occurs. Jung called this process active imagination, a dialogue between the conscious mind and the subconscious through visualization, writing art, or inner dialogue. Instead of suppressing dreams or visions, one allows them to unfold, interacting with their symbolic content. For example, someone haunted by the image of a dark forest might enter it in imagination, asking what it represents. The forest could symbolize fear, the unknown, or repressed creativity. By facing it, the person reclaims the energy trapped in that symbol. This is the essence of shadow work, transforming fear into awareness. Symbols evolve as we evolve. What begins as a frightening image can become a guide once integrated. The subconscious uses symbols to teach us the language of our soul. Each image is a mirror reflecting not just what we are, but what we might become. The role of religion and myth. Jung considered religions and myths to be grand symbolic systems that encode the wisdom of the unconscious. He saw the figures of Christ, Buddha, and other deities as archetypal representations of the self, the divine center of the psyche, striving for wholeness. Religious rituals, symbols like the cross, the mandala, or the serpent, are not mere cultural artifacts but psychological expressions of the human need for meaning. In Jung's view, the decline of religious symbolism in modern society left people spiritually homeless. Without myth, the unconscious becomes chaotic. People replace the sacred with ideologies, addictions, or obsessions, modern substitutes for lost symbols. The subconscious demands expression. If we do not give it sacred meaning, it will create pathological ones. That is why the modern psyche suffers from anxiety, nihilism, and disconnection. We have forgotten how to speak our inner symbolic language, personal symbols, and individuation. Each individual also develops a personal symbolic system, a unique constellation of images tied to their experiences. For one person, the ocean may represent peace, for another, terror. Jung encouraged his patients to record dreams, explore recurring motifs, and notice what symbols evoke strong emotion. The intensity of feeling reveals psychic importance. The process of individuation, Jung's central idea, depends on decoding and integrating these symbols. Every symbol points toward the self, the totality of conscious and unconscious life. When you honor a recurring symbol instead of ignoring it, you participate in your own psychological evolution. The subconscious does not demand obedience. It seeks collaboration. The shadow in symbolic disguise. Among all symbols, the most confronting are those that represent the shadow. The shadow appears as monsters, demons, enemies, or dark strangers. These figures embody repressed aspects of the personality that the ego denies. Jung observed that the more a person identifies with being good or spiritual, the darker their shadow becomes. Dreams of being chased, attacked, or possessed often symbolize the struggle with one's own rejected impulses. The shadow's purpose is not to destroy, but to integrate. It carries vitality, creativity, and authenticity that have been buried under moral or social conditioning. By facing these dark symbols, instead of repressing them, one becomes whole. Synchronicity and symbolic reality. Sometimes the symbolic language of the subconscious extends beyond dreams into real life. Jung called this synchronicity the meaningful coincidence of inner and outer events. For example, you might dream of a white owl, and the next day encounter one unexpectedly. The rational mind calls it chance. Jung saw it as the psyche revealing its unity with the world. Synchronicity shows that the subconscious is not confined within the skull. It interacts with reality itself, weaving meaning into coincidence. These events remind us that the psyche and the universe are mirrors of each other. The world becomes alive with symbols when we are attuned to the subconscious. The subconscious as storyteller. Ultimately, the subconscious mind is the great storyteller of human existence. It weaves every experience into a narrative of meaning. Whether through myth, art, or personal dreams, it tells the story of transformation, the eternal cycle of descent into darkness and return to light. Jung believed that by learning this symbolic language, we awaken from psychological blindness. We begin to see that every struggle, every attraction, every fear is a symbolic invitation to evolve. The language of the subconscious is not meant to be analyzed coldly, but experienced. It speaks in colors, sensations, archetypes, and emotions. It invites participation. The conscious ego must learn humility, for it is not the author of the story, but a character within it. When we stop resisting the symbols and start listening to them, we find that the subconscious is not chaotic at all. It is profoundly ordered, guided by the archetypal rhythm of the self seeking wholeness. Part 3: How the Subconscious Shapes Reality. Most people believe their reality is built from external events, circumstances, luck, environment, or other people. But Carl Jung turned that perspective upside down. He revealed that our external world is often a reflection of our inner one. What we experience out there is largely shaped by what lives inside the subconscious mind. This is not mystical, wishful thinking. It's psychological fact. The subconscious influences perception, emotion, decision-making, and even what we notice in the first place. In Jung's words, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The invisible filter of perception. Every individual views reality through a subjective filter built by their subconscious. Two people can walk through the same storm, yet one sees beauty while the other sees doom. The difference lies not in the weather, but in the psyche interpreting it. Our subconscious mind organizes perception to confirm its inner narrative. If someone carries an unconscious belief of unworthiness, they will subconsciously gravitate toward experiences that confirm that belief, rejection, neglect, or humiliation. If another carries a subconscious conviction of abundance or self-trust, they will naturally notice opportunities others overlook. The subconscious functions as the lens of experience. It doesn't just interpret the world, it shapes the very reality we live within by filtering what enters awareness. Modern neuroscience confirms Jung's intuition perception is selective. Out of millions of sensory inputs, our brain filters what aligns with our internal model of the world. That model, our expectations, fears, desires, and memories, is primarily subconscious. Thus, before we even see reality, our psyche has already shaped it to match our inner world. Emotional projection. The subconscious painting. The world. One of Jung's most important discoveries was psychological projection, the process by which we attribute our own unconscious qualities to others. When we see arrogance, betrayal, or cruelty in someone else and react with intense emotion, we are often confronting a disowned part of ourselves. The subconscious externalizes what it cannot accept internally. For example, a person who represses their anger might constantly encounter aggressive people. A woman who denies her own ambition may resent powerful women around her. These experiences are not coincidences but mirrors. The subconscious projects its content onto the outer world, forcing us to face it indirectly. Jung described projection as the psyche's way of bringing the unconscious into consciousness. Life becomes the mirror of the soul, and every strong emotional reaction is a message. This lives inside you. When we withdraw projections, when we realize that what disturbs or fascinates us outside is a reflection of our inner state, we reclaim lost pieces of our psyche. The outer conflict dissolves and integration begins. The law of psychological resonance. Long before the law of attraction became popularized, Jung understood its psychological foundation. He called it synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence of inner and outer events. When your subconscious holds a certain emotional vibration, you attract or notice experiences that resonate with it. This is not magic. It is resonance. Our subconscious mind continually broadcasts our inner emotional frequency into the world through behavior, tone, energy, and subtle perception. Others respond to that energy consciously or not. For instance, a person with a deep fear of abandonment may unconsciously act in ways that push others away, confirming the very fear they dread. Another with a quiet confidence naturally inspires trust and cooperation. Jung saw this as the psyche's self-regulating mechanism. Life mirrors our inner condition so we can evolve. The patterns that repeat toxic relationships, self-sabotage, or endless disappointment are not punishments. They are feedback loops from the subconscious, saying, there is something unresolved here. When you heal the inner pattern, the external one shifts almost automatically. The power of complexes in daily life. Jung's concept of psychological complexes explains why some life patterns seem impossible to break. A complex is a cluster of emotionally charged memories, beliefs, and instincts that operate autonomously like a small personality within the psyche. Complexes are born from emotional trauma and repression. They can dominate behavior without our consent. Imagine someone with an inferiority complex. Consciously, they may appear humble, but subconsciously, they carry a constant sense of not being enough. This complex filters every interaction. Praise feels like pity, success feels undeserved, and relationships feel like competitions. No matter how the external situation changes, The inner script remains until it's brought into awareness. Complexes are like magnets. They draw to us experiences that match their emotional tone. A victim complex attracts situations that reinforce helplessness. A rescuer complex finds people who need saving. Jung said that until a complex is made conscious, it behaves as fate. Once we recognize the pattern and own it, the energy locked inside transforms from compulsion to power. Reality is a mirror of the psyche. Jung's patients often reported uncanny coincidences, dreams predicting real events, symbolic patterns repeating in daily life. Jung interpreted these as synchronicities when the inner world and outer world align meaningfully. For example, a person might dream of an overflowing river, then experience an emotional breakdown the next day. The subconscious uses external reality as its canvas to express what consciousness ignores. This mirror effect also operates in relationships. The people who enter our lives often represent parts of our psyche seeking integration. The nurturing friend may embody our unacknowledged kindness. The manipulative partner may reflect our own hidden need for control. Even our enemies serve a purpose. They carry the shadow qualities we refuse to own. Once we understand this, resentment turns into revelation. Jung believed the world is not made up of isolated objects, but of living symbols. Every encounter, every event has potential meaning. The goal of individuation, the process of becoming whole, is to recognize that outer and inner reality are two sides of the same coin. The universe, in Jung's view, is psychological at its core. The subconscious and emotional energy. The subconscious also dictates how emotional energy flows. When we repress feelings, that energy doesn't disappear. It sinks into the unconscious and seeks expression through symptoms, dreams, or behavior. Anger may return as depression. Grief may transform into apathy. Fear may project as control. The subconscious mind is energy in motion. If denied, it distorts reality until acknowledged. This is why some people experience recurring crises. The subconscious will create conditions that force emotional release. A breakup, an illness, or a career collapse can serve as catalysts for inner transformation. Jung viewed such events not as misfortunes, but as psychic compensations, the psyche's attempt to restore balance between consciousness and the unconscious. When we align consciously with these energies, allowing emotion to move, reflecting on its meaning, life no longer feels like punishment. We begin to see every crisis as communication from the deeper self, inviting us to integrate what we've rejected. The self-regulating universe, Jung's worldview, was profoundly holistic. He believed that psyche and matter are not separate but interconnected expressions of the same reality. The subconscious mind operates within this universal field, creating patterns that reflect the individual's inner development. This is why synchronicities often appear at critical moments. The right teacher appears when the student is ready. The job loss that leads to a calling. The heartbreak that opens the heart to spiritual growth. These are not random events but expressions of the self, the organizing principle of the psyche guiding the ego toward wholeness. From this perspective, reality is not something happening to us, it's happening through us. The subconscious mind collaborates with the universe to arrange experiences that foster growth. Once you recognize, this victimhood dissolves. You begin to see patterns not as curses but as symbols, each one a lesson designed by the deeper intelligence within. Healing the relationship between conscious and subconscious. The tension between the conscious ego and the subconscious is natural and necessary. The ego brings focused decision and individuality. The subconscious brings depth, wisdom, and universality. Problems arise when the ego tries to dominate or ignore the subconscious, cutting itself off from the source of vitality. Jung compared this to a tree severing its roots. It may stand for a while, but it will eventually wither. Healing begins when we restore dialogue. This means paying attention to dreams, coincidences, and emotions. It means questioning our automatic reactions and tracing them back to their source. Meditation, journaling, or therapy are not just mental exercises. They are tools for translating the symbolic language of the subconscious into conscious understanding. When this dialogue deepens, reality itself becomes more coherent. We stop seeing chaos and start perceiving meaning. Life still brings challenges, but they feel purposeful rather than cruel. The subconscious ceases to sabotage and begins to cooperate. The external world shifts subtly, not because of magic, but because our perception, energy, and choices are now aligned with our inner truth. The dance between inner and outer worlds. Jung believed that life is a dance between the inner and outer worlds, psyche and reality, reflecting each other in constant dialogue. The subconscious mind choreographs this dance, bringing into our path what consciousness needs to see. If we resist, the lessons repeat. If we listen, they evolve. Every argument, every attraction, every coincidence carries symbolic meaning. The universe becomes a mirror, and awareness becomes the key to harmony. Jung's philosophy teaches that transformation is not about escaping reality, but perceiving it more deeply, understanding that our world is an externalized dream of the subconscious. When we integrate this truth, responsibility replaces blame, and curiosity replaces fear. We stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this showing me about myself?" At that moment, the subconscious no longer shapes our life from the shadows. It becomes our partner in creation. Part 4. Awakening and integrating the subconscious. Awakening to the subconscious is not an intellectual achievement. It is a profound psychological and spiritual transformation. It means turning inward, facing what we fear most, and learning to live from a place of wholeness rather than fragmentation. Carl Jung devoted his entire life to guiding people through this inner journey, which he called individuation, the process by which a person becomes the self, the totality of both conscious and unconscious life. Most people live divided. The ego, our conscious identity, claims to be in control, but in truth it is only a fragment of the psyche. Beneath it lies an ocean of instinct, emotion, memory, and archetypal energy that the ego barely understands. Integration is the reconciliation of these opposites, bringing light into darkness and discovering that the darkness itself contains light. The descent, confronting the shadow. The first step in awakening the subconscious is confronting the shadow, everything about ourselves that we deny, reject, or repress. Jung called the shadow the thing a person has no wish to be. It holds our anger, envy, lust, fear, and guilt, but also our creativity, courage, and authenticity, the raw vitality of life. To integrate the shadow, one must stop pretending to be purely good or rational. The shadow is not evil, it is simply unconscious. When we deny it, it controls us from the dark. When we face it, we reclaim its power. This confrontation is not comfortable. It requires brutal honesty and self-observation. But it is also liberating, because every time we acknowledge a hidden impulse, we retrieve energy that was trapped in repression. Imagine a person who suppresses anger to appear kind. That energy doesn't vanish. It becomes passive aggression, resentment, or illness. When they finally admit their anger, not as moral failure, but as a natural emotion, the energy transforms into assertiveness and clarity. The subconscious ceases to fight consciousness. It begins to cooperate. Jung saw this descent into the shadow as a symbolic night-sea journey, a mythic descent into the underworld. Every hero in mythology, from Christ's temptation in the desert to Buddha's confrontation with Mara, represents the same psychological truth. Transformation requires facing the inner darkness. Only through descent can there be rebirth. The dialogue with the unconscious. After confronting the shadow comes communication, what Jung called active imagination. It is a conscious dialogue with the images and energies of the subconscious. Instead of suppressing dreams or fantasies, one interacts with them. You can visualize, write, or paint the figures that appear, asking them what they represent. This practice bridges the gap between the conscious and the unconscious. For example, if someone repeatedly dreams of a dark figure following them, they can imagine turning around and asking, "Who are you? What do you want?" The answer that arises, whether in words, emotion, or image, often reveals a part of the psyche that needs acknowledgement. Through such dialogue, the subconscious becomes less chaotic and more cooperative. This process must be approached with respect, not control. The subconscious is ancient and wise. It does not respond to commands, but to attention. When we listen, it reveals guidance, creativity, and meaning. Many of Jung's patients found that their dreams began to assist their therapy, offering symbolic advice or resolution to conflicts the conscious mind could not solve. Dreams as the voice of integration. Dreams are the most natural form of conversation between the conscious and subconscious. Each dream is a story staged by the unconscious, reflecting the current balance or imbalance of the psyche. Awakening to this dialogue means recording dreams, interpreting symbols, and noticing patterns. If you dream of losing your way, the subconscious might be signaling disorientation in your waking life. If you dream of water, it may represent emotional depth. The point is not to decode dreams mechanically, but to enter relationship with them. Every symbol carries personal meaning that evolves as consciousness expands. When we treat dreams as allies, we discover that the subconscious is not an enemy, but a teacher. It speaks in riddles because truth is not always linear. It guides us through symbols because that is the only language vast enough to express the soul. The role of the anima and animus. Jung discovered that integration also requires balancing inner gender polarities. The anima, the inner feminine in men, and the animus, the inner masculine in women. These are archetypal energies, representing emotional, intuitive, and rational aspects of the psyche. A man cut off from his anima becomes rigid, intellectual, disconnected from feeling. A woman cut off from her animus may become indecisive, overly emotional, or dependent. Integration means recognizing and honoring these inner opposites. When a man listens to his intuition, creativity, and emotional depth, he awakens his anima and becomes more complete. When a woman cultivates her inner authority, logic, and focus, she awakens her animus and becomes self-empowered. The union of these forces births the self, the androgynous wholeness that transcends gender, culture, and ego. Individuation. The path to the self. All Jungian psychology leads toward individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, beyond masks, conditioning, and collective expectations. It is not about perfection but wholeness, embracing both light and shadow, reason and instinct, masculine and feminine, human and divine. The subconscious plays a central role in individuation because it holds everything the ego has ignored. Each time we integrate an unconscious content, a fear, a dream, an archetype, the boundary between conscious and unconscious dissolves a little more. Eventually, a person experiences moments of profound unity where the inner and outer worlds mirror each other perfectly. Jung called this the experience of the self, the totality of being. This process is not linear. It unfolds through crises, synchronicities, and revelations. A failed relationship, a loss, or a creative breakthrough can all be catalysts. The subconscious orchestrates these events, not to punish but to awaken. Every conflict is an initiation, every wound a doorway. Synchronicity, the outer reflection of inner integration. As integration deepens, life itself begins to change. Meaningful coincidences, synchronicities, appear with increasing frequency. You think of a friend and they call. You read a symbol in a dream and it appears in the world the next day. These are not miracles but reflections of harmony between the conscious and unconscious. Jung described the self as a cosmic organizer, aligning inner growth with outer events. When we are fragmented, the world seems chaotic. When we are integrated, it becomes symbolic, a living mirror of the psyche. Awakening to the subconscious thus transforms existence into dialogue. Life speaks and we finally understand its language. The ego's surrender and transformation. Integration requires the ego to surrender its illusion of control. This surrender is not defeat, but alignment. The ego learns it is not the ruler, but the servant of a greater intelligence, the self. When the ego resists, life becomes suffering. When it cooperates, life becomes flow. Jung compared the relationship between the ego and self to that of the planet orbiting the Sunday. The ego has its own path, but the center, the true source of light, is the self. Real awakening occurs when the ego recognizes that it revolves around a deeper core of meaning and energy. This realization dissolves fear. We stop living defensively and start participating consciously in the unfolding of our destiny, healing through awareness. The integration of the subconscious is the ultimate healing. Many psychological symptoms, anxiety, depression, compulsion, arise from the split between conscious intention and unconscious truth. When that split closes, energy flows freely again. What was once neurosis becomes creativity. What was once confusion becomes purpose. Awareness itself heals. The moment we see a subconscious pattern clearly, it loses its grip. What was dark becomes illuminated. What was foreign becomes familiar. We realize that every emotion, even pain, carries intelligence. The subconscious is not trying to harm us, it is trying to complete us. Living in alignment. To live in alignment with the subconscious means living symbolically. Every event becomes a message, every feeling a guide. You begin to see that relationships are not coincidences, but mirrors, that obstacles are not punishments, but initiations. The subconscious and the conscious mind dance together in rhythm. Such a life feels different. There is depth behind every joy and calm, even within chaos. Decisions flow not from anxiety but intuition. The world seems alive because it is. Jung called this state participation mystique, a feeling of unity between the individual and the cosmos. In this awareness, spirituality and psychology become one. The subconscious no longer lurks as a shadow, it shines as the hidden sun within the soul. Integration means not escaping the human condition, but illuminating it. Finding the sacred within the ordinary, the eternal within the moment. The self, the birth of inner wholeness. When the subconscious and conscious unite, a new center emerges, the self. This is not the ego's idealized version of perfection, but the totality of who we are: light and darkness, joy and sorrow, divine and human. The self is the inner God image, the spark of universal consciousness living through each person. Jung saw this realization as the true purpose of life. The aim of existence is not success or comfort, but consciousness, to bring light into matter, awareness into instinct, and meaning into suffering. The subconscious is the womb of this transformation. Through it, the divine becomes human, and the human becomes divine. To awaken the subconscious, then, is to awaken the soul. It is to see with both eyes, one turned toward the outer world, one turned inward toward eternity. It is to live as a bridge between heaven and earth, between the seen and the unseen. When that integration occurs, life ceases to feel random. Everything becomes connected, purposeful, alive. The journey never truly ends. Integration is continuous. But each step toward awareness expands our freedom. We become less reactive, more creative. We stop seeking meaning outside and begin radiating it from within. The subconscious, once feared, becomes the inner compass, guiding us toward the wholeness we have always been seeking. The subconscious isn't your enemy, it's your greatest teacher. It holds the pain you've buried, the dreams you've ignored, and the wisdom your ego is too afraid to face. When you stop running from it and start listening, it transforms everything. Because, as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The question is, are you ready to wake up?